Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, it is my privilege to welcome a very senior professional from the financial services industry, Gaurav Suri. Gaurav, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me over.
Thank you. Gaurav is the Senior Executive Vice President and Head of Marketing Products of UTI Asset Management Company. He is the founding member of AMFI Financial Literacy Committee, and he was behind the Mutual Funds Sahi Hai campaign. He has earlier spent time with MetLife, Britannia, and Perfetti. So Gaurav, tell me, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
Well, that's a good question and a tough question to answer, I would say, because I still believe that the best is yet to come, Ashutosh.
I'm sure.
But I think that one thing which brings a smile to my face is perhaps the fact that I put across a very high-performing team that pushed conventional boundaries in MetLife. MetLife was this insurance firm. I joined the firm about a year since its inception. And it was really kind of a mix of a startup culture and ambition to grow big.
Correct.
So I think the foundational pieces, how I built a team together and created scalable processes, and all of them are really very successful individuals. So I think that really brings a smile to my face. The other, I think, I would go back in time and write the time when I passed out of campus. I did my MBA. And all the things you study in MBA is around brand and advertising and building product. And I think initial career, the joy and love I discovered for sales and the success I achieved thereof. I think once I internalized that it's always a left and a right brain combination, even in sales, though the stereotype is more about rah and fist pumping and chest thumping.
Correct.
But I think that was another piece. I think the last piece would be around the transformational tasks which I've had, right from initial days, whether it was in FMCG in managing logistics to, doing this startup for a young insurance firm, or now in a very old organization, in fact, which started mutual funds in the country, but really steering it. So now I work at the cusp of technology, data, consumer insights, and products.
Amazing.
And I think so every day is challenging and new.
Fantastic. So Gaurav, let's talk about mutual funds. And for the thousands of young listeners and viewers, it's a very high-profile campaign that is being run, the Mutual Funds Sahi Hai, with all kinds of cricketers. You can't possibly forget that campaign.
Right.
What is a mutual fund?
Good question again. And sometimes the simplest questions are the hardest to answer.
Correct.
But my sense is, if I was to give a one-line answer, it's a investment option that pools money of several investors.
Okay.
And puts them in various instruments, underlying assets like bonds, money market, shares. And the aim of this investment product is to optimize returns while diversifying risk. Now, what do I mean by that?
Yeah.
First, let me just step back a quick bit and set 2 minutes context. I think it's important for everyone who's listening to this videocast and podcast later on is to understand, why should you invest? I think that's the first question one must answer for oneself. The simple answer to that is to protect the buying capability of the money you earn. You put so much of effort in earning your money, but little do we realize that over a period of time, because of this whole monster called inflation, our capability of that money to buy the same things diminishes over a period of time.
Okay.
Therefore, we have to invest it well. And when I say invest it, it is not letting it lie in a bank or in a deposit where it earns lesser than what is the inflation, but invest it in instruments where it is able to earn more so that you protect the buying capability of that money.
Okay.
So mutual fund is a vehicle, besides diversifying risk, offer, I think, professional management. Some of the mutual funds offer tax advantages. And it, for people who are hesitant to enter the market, it's also a vehicle which allows you to experience the category for sums as small as 500 rupees. And there are very different products. So I think the association on mutual fund is that they're all risky products, and that's untrue. So there are millions of products, which are available. I would say zillions of products which are available depending on your need. And therefore, if you put in some effort, I think one would find the right product for the right need.
Fantastic. And, for again, a young investor,
Right.
the challenge is that should I put money into equity or should I put money into mutual fund? What is the path do you think people should take?
Like I said, mutual funds are vehicles which finally can pool your money from various people and invest it in equities, right? So it's a easier way to address the same asset class. The difference is now tons of people are getting together and putting their money and helping you buy a larger part of the market.
Right.
So the benefits are obviously, I would say, for somebody who's starting on, he should look at, looking at mutual fund. But I would say, I think one again has to take a step back while I've answered your question.
Sure.
I think what you have to look at it is look at what's your financial goal. Are you looking at something as a short term, which is something what we experienced in the pandemic? Some people lost their jobs, some people had a halt on their salaries. So do you want to create an emergency fund? Then obviously don't put it in equity. If it's a short term or a medium term goal, like making a down payment of a house or a car, again, there are options which are hybrid. They vary between, say, more secure options, I would say less riskier options like a debt product and equity. And then a long-term financial intent like retirement, definitely you should look at equities. Also your risk profile. Markets by definition or by nature, this beast is beset by volatility. There are ups and downs. If your heart can't take that shock, stay away from equity.
Correct.
But the way to handle that is that you place that bet for a long time. The horizon or putting your money for a longer horizon is one way to take that bet. So I think these things should definitely be in your mind, your financial goal, your risk profile, and your horizon. And then you should look at equities as the underlying asset and mutual fund definitely. Because the other benefit is, equity, if I'm an individual investor and I have a fixed outlay, say $5,000, I might be able to buy only one share, a share A. But the same 5,000 money is getting into a mutual fund, I could actually have fractional ownership of 20
Multiple
shares.
Correct. And what are the risks associated with mutual funds, if any?
No, obviously, by the nature of the category, since the underlying assets are linked to the market, there are risks associated. But having said that, I think let me just say the cash in your house carries the risk of physical damage or loss due to theft.
Correct.
The recurring deposit or the money lying in your bank carries the risk of the bank defaulting.
Yeah.
The house you book carry the risk of delayed possession or the builder running away with your money. And we've seen many of those cases. So I think the biggest risk comes from not knowing what you're doing, and not investing itself is a risk. Having said that, I think the mutual fund and the underlying products, like I said, mutual funds are vehicle which
Correct.
help you put your money in underlying assets. So it reflects the risk of the underlying assets. So depending on the risk return profile, government securities carries the minimal risk, and equities, if they're concentrated and sectoral, carry the higher relative risk. Obviously, the way to balance this is like I said, if you look at a long term, there is enough evidence to show that over a 10-year or a 15-year period, equities as an asset class deliver the maximum returns. The other risk which you have to look out, and here I think you have to seek the help of people, is things like liquidity risk. If you need your money immediately, if you put it in an investment vehicle, which by definition has a lock-in, like a ELSS fund where you get tax advantage, it has a 3-year lock-in. Then you shouldn't be putting that money because there is a liquidity issue there.
Correct.
Or a concentration risk where I kind of have invested in very few stocks, underlying stocks or products, So there is a concentration theme which plays in, and so on and so forth. I will
Very
not
interesting.
really bore you with that.
No, very
detail.
interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So my next question to you is, you were talking about the Mutual Funds Sahi Hai campaign. Tell me about this campaign. What were some of your challenges, and what have been the successes?
So I think first of all, let me tell you, it's a great industry initiative. Just to give you context, there were some 44 AMCs, asset management companies in the industry, and there are very few examples where the industries have collaborated at this level.
Correct.
The regulator came in and said that 1% of your top line you have to collate, and then you can invest to grow the category.
Wow.
So the problems are, we are a huge country. If you look at it by any measure, whether
Absolutely.
demographics or population, for the category which goes back to about 60, 65 years, we were beset with low penetration and low literacy levels. So one of the key tasks was that if you raise awareness, if people become more confident, they have more knowledge to make the right choices, they will own a lot more of this. Then there was a concentration theme. It was primarily a large metro phenomenon. So when 2016-17 or March 17, when we came together, this was one of the pieces. The other was that it was not associated with long-term goal planning.
Okay.
It was associated with a get rich quick kind of a phenomena. And a lot of people had these myths that it's not for me, it's only for the people who have money. Pretty much like the early days of, I would say, the malls and air-conditioned stores. That's only for the rich kind of a feeling. And it's only about equities. Again, mutual funds were analogous to equities. So this was I would say, the bigger pieces. It is not, while one cannot deny, if I were to talk to you and explain, like I said, if you earned your monies working so hard, won't you want to protect its buying capability, buying power? You would say yes. But still, cognitively you understand, but behaviorally you will not go and invest. And then as a category, we were not part of everyday conversations. I think that was a biggest task. So one of the things which we did, I think our challenge was in saying, while brands will get the task of onboarding customers, the task of AMFI, the Association of Mutual Funds of India, is to warm up people to the idea of mutual funds. As a simple one line, I would say, category task, it was about art of conversations.
Correct.
How will you make mutual funds part of regular conversations in the Aam Aadmi of India, Bharat, whatever you might want to call it, and how do you do it? I think this was the core task. And in terms of what we were able to achieve, I think phenomenal success in really nearly, I would say, doubling the category in terms of retail participation over the 2-year period when I was associated in the initial work we did. It showed some phenomenal results. Obviously,
Huge.
it was riding on the tailwinds of two more things, I would say. Demonetization. So there was a shift towards financialization of assets. And obviously the RERA guidelines. India was mostly about physical assets, gold or real estate.
Correct.
So some of these things helped us. I think it gave the tailwinds and we were able to capitalize on this.
Fantastic. So let me move to the next question now, Gaurav. You've been a successful senior professional for a long time. What are some of the core values you believe in?
I think for me, primarily, it's been about building trusted relationships. I come from a Fauji background. My father was in the armed forces. I think some of these things have been ingrained in my psyche as well. And
that's very nice to know, because I'm also from a Fauji background.
Oh, okay. So my father was an artillery person who converted to infantry. I think doer, walking the talk, saying what you mean. Foundational things first. I think that's part of my, core. Integrity of character, if I can say, do things that feel right by the heart. That's how I would define. If you're able to sleep nicely without having to think twice about it, your conscience is clear. Because you face a lot of these conflicts in corporate life, correct, I would say. And the last would be, I think, about authentic expressions. I don't think you can have a Jekyll and Hyde. A lot of people, have this duality of work
Personality.
life and
Yeah.
personal is different, professional. I think it's about authentic expressions. You carry a part of your self to work and you bring part of your work home. As long as you're able to be authentic about it, I think it's fine.
Fantastic. And again, leading so many companies, doing, large teams, obviously, what would you say is your leadership style?
So I think a few things would define. I think on the back of what I said was my values. I think the first piece is conviction of purpose. Ability to align what a function should deliver for business, and that's imperative whether you're having youngsters in your team or older people. Finally, the reason for us being in business is to deliver outcomes of business. So
Right.
if you wear a functional hat, this often leads to conflict. So this is the first thing I would say. The other is, I think, value-based leadership. When I say that, it's fundamentals always first. I believe in that. Unless until you build the foundation right, if you do short-term measures to, get in the right space, you tend to falter down, or you leave a bad space for the next one who's coming to take your
Correct.
seat. Then there is a big jhadu which happens. Third, I think the strategy is as good as its execution. When the rubber meets the road. Fourth, I would say it is about continuous learning. I think that I truly believe in that. I think love the journey from ignorance to competence, but it's the journey. I think it's the curiosity to discover, to ask questions, and to find new things.
Very nice.
And the last two things would be, I think, one is obviously on when people say innovation, I kind of translate into everyday improvement. Instead of looking for a big bang or a very different idea, if every day we can spot something new and improve on it, we are headed in the right direction. And the last is people, I think, playing on people's strength, because leadership is about managing people. Really not paying too much of attention on weaknesses, but really look at them as, I would say, analogous to a brand management or a product management style. How do you heighten the core strength of the product and let them deliver for that?
Amazing. So one more question for you before I move to some questions personally. Gaurav, this is the age of the millennials and the Gen Zs.
Right.
And what I have heard from many people, including my own children, is that they're living for the moment. They want to be able to spend a lot of their money. You're in the savings business.
Right.
What is your experience of the millennials and the Gen Zs and mutual funds? Are they saving enough?
Well, so first, I think we've adopted this Western concept on millennials and Gen Z.
Correct.
I would just say that what is true for us is maybe a mobile phone generation and a smartphone generation.
Okay.
So there was some truth to it. I think I would probably come in the millennials kind of a generation. I think we we were kind of the first emerging class out of a middle class kind of a, space, wanting to strive and aspire. So there was a conflict in probably spending, acquiring material things and stuff like that. While I think the Gen Z or the smartphone generation, as you call it, having less, I would say, responsibilities towards home in their need to give back to home.
Correct.
I think they have with all the misconceptions which exist, I think they have a fair head on their shoulders.
Okay.
And while there is pressure, there is peer pressure on spending and having a good time, but I think these guys are the smartest guys in knowing how to balance life.
Fantastic.
Balance in the sense, having a good time while also working very hard to achieve their goals in the right. I think clarity of purpose is I've found amazing in the youngsters. Desires to learn, familiarity with technology, I think phenomenal.
Amazing.
So I won't fault them on not saving enough, I would say.
Okay, well said. So time for a couple of questions for you personally. My first question for you, Gaurav, is that, you've seen so much success in so many different industries. What does success mean to Gaurav?
Oh, that's a tough one. So there is I don't know who said this, but there's something which I've read which has kind of been ingrained in my mind. Maybe it's Emerson. I'm not sure who has said it, but let me just say it aloud for you.
Yeah.
The logic of worldly success rests on a fallacy. The strange error that a perfection depends on the thoughts and opinions and applause of other men.
Okay.
A weird life it is, always living in somebody else's imagination, as if it were the only place which could become real. So to me, success is, I think, if you can be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else, is the greatest accomplishment. And this is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I know who has said this, but I resonate with this.
Okay.
So I think success to me is about enduring relationships. It's about being trustworthy. It's being able to say your mind, not being, and I find it challenging. While I say this, I think I struggle to go back to my youthful days when I had this, as you get older in the corporate life, you are on a tightrope walk in sometimes not being able to say the right thing. But I think to me, that is success.
Fantastic. So my next question to you is on failure, and I have a new book coming out on failure in 2 months' time. And I've always maintained that parents in India or South Asia don't teach their children that it's okay to fail.
Right.
Yet we fail all the time and learn. So my question to you, Gaurav, is what has been some of your biggest learnings from some of your biggest mistakes or failures?
I think I've been fortunate enough very early on in my life, when I was a youngster, 24, 25 years old. I got a great task on my shoulder to, get into a new category. And we were driving it with all zest, working, however much time the day allowed you to work. And it miserably bombed for the category. And some of those learnings have always stayed with me for life. First of all, I think the fear of failure is misplaced. As long as you can learn from your mistakes, I think it's great. The other thing is people and culture drive great results. So success binds you. So, but if you give space for failures, it creates more psychological ownership.
Okay.
That's the other piece. The other thing is, there are three resources you can play around while you're doing business, right? Man, money, or, time. You can't short circuit all the three at the same time. One will give way. I think that's the other. If you look at failure, I remember we were in a group meeting and our head, a very senior person, a VP, would say, do it as of yesterday. For everything, it was, as of yesterday. Why has it not been done? Do it. And somebody jokingly said, sir, 9 men do not make a baby in a month. So, so sometimes you can't really crash. There is a finite time required. As long as you're realistic about it, I think it's good. The other, I think, learning is there's no right way of doing things. So I think sometimes you just take a longer time to discover, or you're too early. Last piece is, I think, I have learned, recently, this happened about a week ago. I was transitioning a new leader into a team, and another team member was holding that space. While I was transitioning, I did not really make the effort to appreciate his or her role to the larger public. And it hurt this person so deeply. It resulted in anxiety and heartburn. And I realized that, I cannot be economic with my appreciation.
Correct.
So I think every time, and I consider it a personal failure, because if you're a leader and you fail to do these things, even though you're blindsided, it's a learning opportunity for you to see कि गांठ बांधने वाली chance है कि you won't let it happen again.
Correct. Well said. So Gaurav, we've now run out of time. So I just want to thank you for an incredible conversation, for so much candor. And I wish you not just a very happy and prosperous and safe new year, but lots and lots of success in whatever you're doing.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me over.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.